The first warning came as a shockwave, shaking buildings in every major city across the globe. It was midnight in New York, dawn in Paris, and midday in Tokyo. But the tremors rattled with an intensity that ignored time zones and seasons, jarring humanity awake. Within hours, a colossal tear in the sky had opened above the Atlantic Ocean, an ominous wound in the fabric of reality. From this tear emerged Fenmar, a creature that was both terrifying and magnificent. Its skin was a shifting armor of obsidian plates with molten seams like rivers of lava, its 4 massive legs ending in talons capable of pulverizing anything beneath it. Standing nearly 100 feet tall, it had a face that was eerily symmetrical, with multiple eyes that radiated a sickly yellow light. A maw bristling with sharp teeth yawned open, revealing a throat glowing from within. It released a roar that resonated across continents, causing birds to fall from the sky in flocks, and sending animals fleeing from cities, forests, and plains alike. Humanity had never seen anything like it. News channels scrambled to cover the phenomenon, dubbing the beast the Titan in the absence of any clearer understanding. No country claimed ownership of it, no earthly science could account for it. The world had barely absorbed its existence when a transmission crackled through every device tuned to the beast. It was an alien signal, clean and resonant, devoid of static. "This is the Council of Nine," the voice announced, eerily calm. "This beast has been released upon your world as punishment for transgressions committed by your species. Your kind is arrogant, selfish, and disruptive to the delicate balance of the cosmos. Fenmar will roam freely until he has subdued your species, or until you prove yourselves worthy of mercy. Survive if you can." For the first time, humanity was not alone, and the Alien Council's message made it clear we were not in favor. Panic erupted across the world. Evacuations began as people fled inland, desperately hoping distance might shield them from the inevitable. Then, something happened that the Council had not foreseen. The first encounter was accidental. In a remote part of eastern Wyoming, Fenmar's towering shadow fell over a small town. Fields lay golden with wheat, and a single lone barn stood by the side of a winding dirt road. As the beast's monstrous bulk approached, the animals within the barn, the cows, sheep, and a dog named Rusty, sensed the tremor of his steps, their bodies trembling with an instinctive fear. Rusty, a scrappy cattle dog with a faded red coat, bolted from the barn, barking furiously as though he could intimidate the giant. For Fenmar, such defiance from a creature so minuscule was unexpected. He lowered his head, his multiple eyes focusing on Rusty, who yipped and lunged forward in a fearless display. At first, Fenmar released a low growl, the earth vibrating with the sound, expecting the dog to flee. Instead, Rusty yapped even louder, showing no sign of retreat. Fenmar cocked his massive head, considering the small creature. This wasn't the usual response he was accustomed to from life forms on decimated worlds. By his programming, Fenmar should have swept his paw and reduced Rusty to dust, but he hesitated. Curiosity, a foreign sensation that, surprisingly, felt like disobedience, stayed his claws. Rusty continued to bark, his stubby tail wagging defiantly. It was an anomaly Fenmar hadn't been programmed to anticipate. The townsfolk, who'd watched this scene from their windows in terrified silence, saw Fenmar's hesitation. They didn't run. They waited. In the following days, Fenmar lumbered across Wyoming and down into the plains of Colorado. His monstrous footsteps carved new valleys. His growls sent herds scattering, but everywhere he went, there was one pattern that began to emerge. Fenmar's rampage slowed each time he encountered animals, be it farm dogs, wild wolves, or stray cats. These creatures didn't merely flee or cower. Some approached him, showed curiosity, even dared to bark or meow at him in defiance. Each encounter tested Fenmar's resolve, but more and more, he found himself pausing to observe, taking in the small creatures that dared to stand their ground. The humans, meanwhile, remained in hiding, witnessing each encounter with wonder and confusion. How could these tiny animals, so helpless and unarmed, make the giant hesitate? A few days later, the first human dared to test her luck. In a small suburban neighborhood outside of Kansas City, 10-year-old Amanda Tremblay sat by her window, clutching her teddy bear as she watched Fenmar's approach. Her backyard faced a field that stretched to a dense line of trees, and there, standing alone and waiting for her return, was her family's golden retriever, Max. Max's collar jingled as he trotted toward Fenmar, curious and unafraid. Amanda's heart raced, terror battling with the urge to call her dog back. Yet she held her breath, watching, hoping. Max paused a few feet from Fenmar's enormous claws, tilting his head up at the towering creature and wagging his tail. Fenmar looked down. A rumbling growl escaped him, a sound that should have sent Max running, yet the dog simply sat, his golden fur glinting in the light of Fenmar's glowing eyes. Max let out a single bark, a sound neither aggressive nor fearful. It was simply friendly. For a long moment there was silence. Amanda watched in wide-eyed amazement as Fenmar slowly, carefully extended one of his claws, touching the ground just inches away from Max, who sniffed it cautiously and wagged his tail even harder. Fenmar seemed transfixed, his usual programmed hostility melting into a cautious acceptance of the dog's innocence. When he finally straightened and moved on, he left Max unscathed, ambling away into the open field beyond. Word spread quickly. Within a week, the resistance had transformed. Instead of hiding, groups of people ventured forward cautiously, accompanied by their dogs, cats, and even pet birds. The animals were the first line of contact, sent ahead to greet Fenmar with wagging tails and curious chirps. To the council, this was entirely unforeseen. Fenmar, after all, was not a creature of compassion he was built to judge, to lay waste to what he saw as lesser beings. Yet here he was, crouching low to watch the approach of every courageous animal that dared to greet him, his formidable strength restrained by some unknown fascination. Then, perhaps most surprising of all, was the day a team of scientists approached Fenmar without fear. As the beast lumbered through a small town in Indiana, a convoy of vehicles parked within his path. From the lead truck emerged Dr. Mira Tanaka, an ethologist and behavioral scientist who had spent the last 3 days observing Fenmar's interactions with animals. She and her team carried a dozen tablets and projectors, setting up a semicircle of holographic screens that flickered to life in front of him. Fenmar halted, his fiery gaze narrowing. Mira stepped forward, undeterred by his intimidating growl. "Fenmar," she called, her voice steady. "We come in peace." The statement seemed laughable under the circumstances, but she raised her hands, gesturing to the screens. On them, images began to play animals with humans, cats curled up on laps, dogs running in fields, and birds perched on outstretched hands. The humans weren't powerful or commanding in these images, they were gentle, vulnerable, and kind. Mira stepped back, allowing the videos to play uninterrupted. Fenmar watched, his eyes shifting from one screen to another. His breath rumbled in quiet contemplation. For the first time, Fenmar considered the humans beyond their destructive potential. To the surprise of everyone present, he spoke. "These creatures are companions." His voice resonated like an avalanche, low and shuddering. Mira nodded, her heart hammering. "Yes, they are our friends, our family. They protect us, and we protect them." Fenmar's eyes shifted toward a stray dog that had approached, a scrappy mutt wagging its tail as it trotted up to Mira's side. Fenmar extended a claw once more, lowering it to the ground. The dog sniffed it, then placed a paw on it, as if in solidarity. "Explain to me loyalty," Fenmar demanded. Mira took a deep breath. "It's a bond. It's something unbreakable, something given freely. It's an agreement to stand by each other no matter what." Fenmar's eyes glinted as he considered this, his rigid posture softening. And then came the shock of the century. Over the following weeks, Fenmar ceased his rampage entirely. Instead, he began appearing in towns and cities, his massive frame dwarfing the skyscrapers. His presence met with trepidation and awe. Crowds gathered, but no one fled. Children watched him with a mixture of fear and excitement, and animals approached him with growing confidence. Rusty Max and countless other dogs seemed to become his unofficial entourage, trotting alongside him like an assembly of unlikely friends. The Council of Nine, meanwhile, was in disarray. They had been monitoring Fenmar's progress with an air of certainty that he would enact swift, decisive destruction. But now, Fenmar had deviated from his primary purpose. The council could see that he was lingering in cities, interacting peacefully with both animals and humans, his hostility diminishing into something resembling curiosity. In a last attempt to regain control, the Council activated Finmar's primary directive, re-triggering his destructive impulse. But this time, Finmar resisted. For the first time, he ignored the searing command in his mind, the order to decimate, to destroy. The image of Max and Rusty, the dogs he had first encountered, burned bright in his memory. He thought of Mira's explanation of loyalty and companionship. He felt the loyalty radiating from the small animals that surrounded him, offering trust despite his size, his strength, his capacity for annihilation. When the Council's next command crackled into his mind, he bellowed a furious roar that shook the earth, a defiant snarl of rebellion that shattered the Council's psychic hold. Finmar turned his gaze skyward, eyes blazing as he released a pulse of energy that reverberated through the atmosphere, severing the connection between himself and the Council. The Council of Nine fell silent. They had lost control of their beast. In the days that followed, Finmar continued to roam, but now as a creature unbound. He wandered from city to city, becoming a strange kind of guardian. Once humanity's greatest threat, Finmar had become a sentinel, a presence that inspired reverence rather than fear. Cities lit up in celebration as Finmar moved through them, and people learned to trust him. Families would come out to watch him from a distance, children waving, animals eagerly approaching to greet him. The Council of Nine, defeated and humiliated, retreated from Earth, unable to comprehend how their ultimate weapon had been tamed by creatures so insignificant. Their arrogance had blinded them to the bonds that could form between species, to the loyalty that could change even a monster's heart. And so Finmar became Earth's guardian. The Titan, once feared as a harbinger of doom, was now a protector. He was never quite tame in the way that humans understood, but he had become a creature bound by loyalty and kindness, finding kinship with the world he had once been sent to destroy. The beast had become Earth's pet, though he would probably insist it was the other way around. With the Council of Nine gone, humanity and Finmar settled into an uneasy peace, like neighbors wary of each other's boundaries. Finmar's immense form moved across the world, and though he remained an awe-inspiring figure, humanity had become used to seeing him in their skies, standing watch over cities and wandering vast, open spaces. However, with his defiance, Finmar felt a shift in his very core. His original purpose, the imprinted rage and judgment, had dissipated, leaving him with a sense of liberation. Yet as days passed, he grew more thoughtful, as if grappling with some newfound sense of responsibility. One day, as Finmar lay resting along a rocky coastline in northern Canada, Mira Tanaka approached him once more, this time alongside a coalition of leaders, scientists, and even a few children. They stood on the cliffs above, their silhouettes tiny against the expanse of Finmar's resting form. Mira had been selected as Earth's ambassador, an unthinkable title only months ago, but now almost inevitable. She had been the one who had first spoken to him, who'd explained loyalty, and who'd led the first steps toward peace. She raised a hand in greeting, and Finmar inclined his head toward her, his massive yellow eyes studying her. She could feel his gaze, vast and heavy, like the weight of centuries compressed into a single look. Finmar, she called up to him, her voice carried by a microphone to be heard over the sound of waves crashing below. "We have questions if you'll hear us." Finmar rumbled in response, his voice echoing in a soft yet unmistakable assent. "Speak, Mira Tanaka. I will listen." Mira took a breath, steadying herself. "You were sent to destroy us. You rebelled against that purpose. But why?" Finmar's gaze grew contemplative, the molten veins across his skin pulsing slightly. "Purpose," he echoed, the word rumbling like a distant storm. "I was given one to pass judgment upon those who disrupt the balance. But I found myself drawn to your loyalty, your bonds with the small creatures who stood against me. That loyalty was unfamiliar, a power I had not been created to understand." Mira exchanged glances with her team, each one awestruck. Even the children, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe, seemed captivated. And now Mira ventured. "What do you see as your purpose?" Finmar tilted his head, the earth beneath him shifting with his movement. "I am still searching. Perhaps I am more than judgment. Perhaps I am protection. His gaze drifted to the children, lingering on their curious faces, to serve as a guardian, but also as one who learns. Learns, one of the children asked, her voice small but carrying in the silence. She was a young girl, no more than 8, clutching a stuffed bear. Do you mean you're going to be our teacher? The rumble that emanated from Fenmar sounded almost amused. Perhaps. You have taught me much already. The delegation began to ask more questions about the council, about other worlds they had subjugated, and about whether he thought they might return. Fenmar answered patiently, describing a vast cosmic hierarchy, an intricate system that thrived on obedience, strength, and the eradication of weaknesses. To the council, humanity's emotional bonds and insistence on individual worth were seen as vulnerabilities, evidence of a species not worth preserving. But Fenmar had seen otherwise. He had witnessed the strength in companionship, the courage in vulnerability, and perhaps, most of all, he had seen a reflection of himself in their struggle. After a lengthy discussion, the delegation departed, satisfied but contemplative. Mira stayed behind as twilight descended, the light painting Fenmar's rocky form in tones of crimson and purple. She watched him in silence until he finally spoke. You are unlike the others, Mira Tanaka, he said, his voice softer than usual. You do not seek to flee or hide. You ask questions even when you fear the answers. Mira nodded, meeting his gaze. When you arrived, our fear was all-consuming. But fear can't last forever, not if we're going to survive. Eventually, we had to try understanding. She smiled faintly. That's our way. Fenmar inclined his head, seeming to accept this. Perhaps it is a way worth learning. If there is strength in unity, then perhaps I might serve as part of that unity. He raised one massive claw, and with a careful, deliberate motion, extended it toward Mira. It was not a threat, it was something closer to a gesture of trust. Without hesitation, Mira stepped forward, laying her hand on the rough, volcanic surface of Fenmar's talon. You'll be welcome here, she said, her voice low but firm. Not as a judge, but as an ally. Fenmar's eyes glowed brighter, something akin to gratitude in their depths. It was an understanding both strange and profound, forged not from conquest or domination, but from trust. Over the following years, Fenmar became a fixture on Earth. His presence remained both reassuring and humbling. He was a reminder of what humanity had narrowly escaped, but also of what they had gained. No longer just an alien enforcer, he became Earth's sentinel, a protector who watched over humanity and its creatures. Whenever he sensed a threat, natural or otherwise, he was there guiding tidal waves away from coastal towns, breaking up storms that threatened to devastate cities, and even driving back a rogue asteroid on a course to strike Earth. He had, in many ways, become exactly what the Council had condemned humanity for, a creature bound by loyalty and an instinct to protect. Children who once trembled at the sight of his immense shadow now greeted him with joy and laughter. Farmers who had first met him in fear would wave to him from their fields, the same fields he'd once nearly destroyed. The Council had sent him to be humanity's reckoning, and he had become their friend. And though he had never been truly tamed, Fenmar had found a new purpose, one that was his own. He was still the Titan, still a creature of unmatched strength, but he had learned to wield that power in harmony rather than in destruction. And Earth, once a strange and insignificant place, had become a home. Some whispered legends arose, stories of the monstrous guardian who had once been the bringer of doom and now lay in gentle slumber in the mountains, watching over them like a silent protector. And whenever people saw his hulking form in the distance, silhouetted against the sunset, they felt the quiet assurance of something vast, ancient, and fiercely loyal. Fenmar had been sent to judge Earth and its people, but in the